Okay, so just take care of a few details. So there's a chat pane on the right-hand side. So if you have any questions, just type them in there. And in fact, in my first slide, I'm going to be asking you guys and gals a few questions, and you can type it in that chat pane, okay? So let's just get started. I want to say this is the fourth in a four-part series, and we really do appreciate everyone who's been attending this past few, and hopefully it's been helpful, and the feedback we received has been, really really nice, and look forward to do another great presentation this time. So okay, so before we get started, I want to do a quick qualitative and quantitative study with you, right? We're talking about quantitative and qualitative results. Let's do a little experiment right here. So what I want you all to do is to think of a good feeling, okay? I want you to close your eyes for a moment. You can hear my voice. And just think of a good feeling and see where it is in your mind, okay? All right, you got it? All right, so now I want you to take that image and make it twice as big, okay? All right, and make it twice as big again. And if it's a picture, make it a movie picture. And if it's black and white, make it color and make it vivid. Got it? All righty. So one more, hold that thought. Now, I want to ask you, when I asked you to double it and double it again and then make it a movie and make it color, would you be at say a 1 with no change in feelings up to a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the maximum? So if you would, in your chat window right now, endorse the number, the rating that you would give in terms of the maximum change in your positive feeling. And we'll just give you a second there. Okay. I got to say, this is one responsive group. That's all I have to tell you right now, okay? All right, so fantastic. All right, great. And good engagement, too. All righty. So now let's just go one more thing, and then we'll get to it. All right, now what was the good feeling? Was it a person? Was it a place? Was it an event? And what was going? Don't get too personal with me. This is a family affair here. But what was that good feeling? Okay, and just type that into the chat window on the right. Okay. Okay, so I'll just read some of these off. Events, sea watching, graduation, a place, graduation, a person, living in my dream house. I love these. Okay, relief from pain. We can talk later. About being here. That's a sycophant, you all right. Walking across the graduation stage. Okay, so fantastic. So what did we just do, okay? What we just did was conduct a study. And the study we just did had a quantitative piece, and we can say, gosh, is the ability of me asking you questions and asking you to change something in your mind actually have a effect on you, right? We actually can say, I feel that much happier, or the smile on my face is bigger, just by thinking of it, right? So I can get the mean and standard deviation of those scores from 1 to 7. And by the way, there are lots of 5, 6, and 7s. That person with the 1, okay, you're what we call an outlier. And we'll come back to outliers when we talk about data cleaning. But at the moment, that's the quantitative piece. Now the qualitative piece, I kind of front-loaded you with person, place, things of that sort, but, we can see themes emerging, right? At the beach, the graduation stage. And we can now kind of categorize those, all right? So that's the nature of what we're doing in the results chapter is we just really want to present, okay? We want to present what the results are, what the data shows after we ask some research questions. So the research question could have been, hey, what is the average response in terms of effectiveness of asking yourself to double that good feeling? Or what were the themes that emerged when we ask about that qualitative aspects of that person-place things. Okay, so let's get right into the results. So let's first deal with that quantitative piece, all right? And great participation, everyone. The quantitative piece. So the first thing you want to do with results is definitely clean the data. And I thank Bob Newman, who is a deceased psychology statistician back that I had in 1993, who used to, when we used to do learn about regressions and so forth, he had this silly little, dinosaur stamp. But what he always told us was to clean the data. And inevitably, and it took many years to learn this, because when you don't clean the data, you go through all the descriptives, and you go through you conduct the regressions, and you conduct the analyses, and you write it up and you say, oh, shucks, my data, I have a crazy outlier. My numbers went from 1 to 7, but I have a 77 that I've entered, okay? Or a blank date or a blank field. So clean the data is critical. And you can clean the data best by conducting descriptive statistics, all right? So what are those? And we're going to get there as well. I'll show you what those are. Well, maybe I'll just stay in order, sorry. Okay. And that was kind of fun to go back and forth. Okay, descriptive statistics. It's really the frequency percentages of your variables, okay, and means and standard deviations. And I'll give you an example of that shortly, okay? So the results, basic overview, clean your data, look at the descriptive statistics, conduct your analyses. People say, well, how do I conduct my quantitative results? Don't get overwhelmed by this. You want to conduct them one by one. It says like any big task, one by one by one, okay? And that one by one, you say, okay, what do I got to do to examine the first research question statistically? Well, I got to look at the assumptions. I have to conduct the analysis. I have to then interpret the output of those assumptions and those analyses. Then I have to write up those results in narrative form and in tables and figures. Okay? By the way, I say with descriptive labels and titles, what I mean by that is some tables are good and some just ain't. So you want ones where a table can really stand by itself. You don't have to have a whole bunch of text or knowledge to see what that table really means, okay? That is, someone can get it by themselves, just by looking at it. Okay, and then at the end of the results, then you want a summary. You want some kind of a summary, right? Give the people where if they went to the summary, they can say, hey, here are the differences that we found, or here are the descriptives that we found, or here's the population that we have. So the summary is just a good overview at the end of what really we found. Okay, clean the data. So now we're going to drill into each of those parts. So to clean the data, descriptive statistics, just to see if they're reasonable. If you have a Likert type scale from 1 to 7, and you have a mean of 8, this is not reasonable. Then you have an issue. So, but you would identify that instantly, right? Or if you did frequencies of how many people endorsed a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that we just did, right? And you said, hey, there were some missing values. What happened to those? Or that there's a 77, as I mentioned, or things of this sort. Or somebody put in a 7.2 or a 5.2. So by looking at those descriptives, that really helps you see, how many people responded to each of those questions and what the kind of the basics of those responses were. Make sense? Okay. Conduct descriptive statistics. Also, you want to get rid of outliers. I picked on the one person who had a 1. Everyone else had really 5, 6, 7s, okay? A few 4s in there. Yeah, I had 1, 1. That may well be an outlier. And so I appreciate that one. I appreciate that 1, 1 because in a lot of analyses, you want to get rid of an outlier, okay? And particularly in regression analysis, one outlier can pull that whole regression line. And what I mean by that is it can really mess up your prediction, okay? So you want to be really sensitive to outliers, and then it's univariate outliers. Okay, that means an outlier on one variable, or multivariate outliers where there are outliers on two variables or more. There's also, okay, and then also be sure to ask questions as I go through this, okay? So I appreciate the one question. Okay, so also imputing missing data. There's hardly any data sets that are really clear, that is clean. What I mean by that is sometimes there's missing data. So if you have 5 different variables and one of the variables is missing 10% of the data, what do we do? Throw out that individual? Well, there's ways of dealing with that. In the old days, they used to just impute the means. So let's just say we had variable number 1. In my example, what is the change in your happiness when I asked you to double and quadruple that image? And as some people may have been missing, what they used to do is say, well, let's get the average. Let's get the average of everyone who did answer score, and then impute that mean into those missing participants. But there's fancier ways now called multiple imputation, and it really looks at not only the one variable, but the entire data set. And based on the entire data set, they then impute that missing variable for a particular case. All right. Also, you could look at normality, and Tabachnik and Fidel talks about this. Basically, it's saying it's a normal bell curve, and a lot of the analyses really count on that that assumption. Okay. I should say, having said look at normality, that often when you have over 50 participants, that assumption can be violated and still have robust or trustworthy results. All right, you got it? Okay. So let's see what other questions we have here. Okay. Do you want to consider? Okay. Okay, so someone asked, do I want to get rid of outliers that can submit in my analysis? You could look to see if outliers, you could do a separate analysis to see if outliers really are different from the rest of the group. And there are different outlier analyses. I honestly think for what we're doing, that's more detailed than I think that dissertations really require. Yes, Tabachnik and Fidel talk about that. Yes, you can do analyses to see if those outliers really do differ from other participants. That is, those observations. But I think for these things, get rid of the outliers. I would say get rid of the outliers where you have them. Okay, so any idea how long it would take to clean data? I mean, it should. Well, fortunately, and you say for a few hundred surveys. I mean, honestly, if you sit down for an hour, you can clean data. Okay, it's not a terribly long task. All right. I mean, obviously, and it depends upon the population or the sample. So if you have a bunch of people that are really spotty with the way that they've entered data and were really, well, I'll say sloppy about it, then it might take a while. But most people filling out surveys, for example, or secondary data, I mean, you should be able to, knock it out in an hour or so. Okay. I'm going to carry on. Descriptive stats. Why else should we conduct descriptive stats? Well, it helps you describe who you have. Lots of samples, particularly in the old days, okay, they had a majority of the men were the participants. Well, a majority of men is not really generalizable to females in lots of cases, okay? So, or a particular region, or particular ethnicity, or particular SES, socioeconomic status, or class. So, it helps you by describing people's age and geography and ethnicity, and I would say basic demographics, okay? It helps you say, well, can I now, if I have third grade teachers sitting, in Key West, can I now generalize to the whole population? Perhaps not. So having a description of where they are and who they are helps you with that generalizability. So those descriptives should be right up top in that results chapter, okay? All right. I think it's a good double check for consistent numbers of observations. So, if you have a 10-item survey, for example, and everyone is missing, that 10th one or the 5th one, you can look to see, hey, what's going on there? What's going on that they're missing that particular item, or they're not seeing that last that last page? Okay. Descriptive stats, here's just kind of an example of frequency and percentages. Typically in APA format you would have, table number X. You would have the title of the table in italics as you see here. You would have the different demographics like gender, age, and education, and their categories, and then their frequency and percentages, okay? By the way, sometimes those percentages don't equal to 100. Why would that be? Okay. Why that would be is that perhaps there were missing values there. Okay, so that's where that missing values piece comes in. Okay, so just heads up on that. Okay. So what does a quantitative results write-up look like? Well, here's one example. So in this particular example, let me just jump down to the table first. So this is an APA table, and you'll see a sums of squares and mean square, the F value with the degrees of freedom in parentheses, and then the probability and then the effect size, okay? And you would have, variable 1 and the between or the error or within numbers associated with sums of square through effect size. And so it would look similar to this. So at the top, you can say no differences exist in this particular outcome variable, presence of organizational change readiness factors, okay, but by gender or between males and females. And then to investigate hypothesis 1 and to examine if there's differences, we conducted an ANOVA. Okay, in this case, well, there's 4 DVs, so it probably should have been a MANOVA. You look at the assumptions of normality and homogeneity of variance, okay? And then you should document that, okay? Then you should get right into the results. So state you're going to conduct this test, look at the assumptions of the test, then report the findings of that, which in this particular case was hey, there was no difference on variable 2 by gender, okay? You present the F with the degrees of freedom, the actual the actual F value, which in this particular case is 0.09, the probability level, and then interpret that. If the P value is greater than 0.05, hey, no differences on this variable by gender. All right. So that's a sample write-up, and each kind of analysis have a slightly different write-up. So if you're doing a correlation or a chi-square or a regression or other kinds of analyses like structural equation modeling or time series, they'll have a slightly different write-up and certainly a different table. But this kind of gives you a flavor of the sequence of things. What am I going to do? What are the assumptions of what I did? What are the analyses, and what does that mean? Got it? Okay. All right. And then there was a question there. Okay, let me jump to qualitative. Okay, so qualitative results. Certainly when you transcribe the interview, you should line number the document. So everyone involved in the project, we literally know what line you're on. Okay? Also, when we actually pull out the themes from that transcript, we can cite, well, it was Sally, line numbers, 20 to 21. So that is that people can readily find where that excerpt is. Okay. The next part is once you have the transcripts. Okay, so we have a narrative, and in my particular dissertation, we were looking at psychotherapy transcripts. So we had 3 individuals who had been in therapy for 16 sessions, and all of those sessions were transcribed. And then we pulled out themes from their interactions between the therapist and the client. So a theme for us, and you can state what a theme is, so for us, a theme was something with it. There were 3 examples of that, okay? So as I used to say, or do say, one hot day doesn't make a summer. Well, not one passage or utterance makes a theme. So I would say if you had 3 or more utterances from either different clients or the same client, that would help to say, hey, gosh, we really have a theme here. Okay. Then we have reliability, and surprisingly, there's very few, well, I don't know why schools don't really require it, but, there is reliability that's associated with those themes. And the reliability of interest is called the kappa coefficient, and it's a measure of inter-rater reliability. So the kappa coefficient essentially says, after we pull out a theme and we have the excerpts, then we assess the reliability with novice raters. And how we do that is we essentially set up the themes on one side and the excerpts on the other, and we'll have novice rater number 1 read that excerpt and say, hey gosh, is theme 1 present or absent? Is theme 2 present or absent? And so forth. And then ditto then I'll read the next theme and say, is theme 1 present or absent, theme 2? Well, when we have 2 raters do that, we can calculate a kappa coefficient, and I'll show you that in the upcoming slides. Other kinds of qualitative results are grounded theory or case study. In grounded theory, there's a process of open axial selective coding, and we can certainly assist you, with that. And then, obviously, all of these results should make good sense to a lay reader. So when your partner, neighbor, before it gets to your committee, they should be able to have some sense of, what you've said here. So it should make some sense. Okay. Here's just an example, again, from my dissertation that to the left under the markers or themes in parentheses, really sharing some of the themes that we identified. Well, we identified 26 different themes, and we looked for them in 3 different cases, therapy cases. And so those themes are, pulled from where we found 3 examples, then the 3 excerpts, where we thought, oh gosh, the theme is there. And then we calculated those kappas, okay, that inter-rater reliability for each theme, for each participant, okay? And by the way, so those kappas you can see in the note have different levels of agreement, okay? It is called inter-rater reliability after all. So, you have, almost perfect agreement, all the way through kind of fair agreement, all right? Okay. Here is the inter-rater reliability piece of it. I really do recommend it. I mean, I think it's really the bow on the package. I won't say it was beat into my head, but we did run probably 20,000 kappas. So maybe a little bit. So, and did it in lots of different ways. But this is how you would calculate a kappa. And this would be on one theme, okay, and that we would look to see the extent to which rater 1 and rater 2 really agreed that a theme was present or absent, okay? And then below it you can see, what observed and expected agreement, how that's defined, okay? And then how that calculates that kappa. All of this, by the way, is in my dissertation on the Statistics Solutions website, or this tape will be available to you, in a day or so. Okay. Results summary, really you want to give them the highlights of the findings, what you found. Paint a picture. We think in pictures, and for people to remember things, and sometimes vividly, as we all know, okay, you want to paint a picture in that reader's mind so they really have an idea of what happened, Help draw a picture for them so they remember it. And when they remember it, they'll move more quickly through what you're speaking about. So try to paint the picture for them. Obviously make it comprehensible. I mean, people have to comprehend, what you've done here. Alrighty. Discussion chapter. Let's talk about that. Certainly in the discussion, we want to introduce the chapter. What are we going to talk about? Reiterate the results with a clear support and non-support for the hypotheses. Hey, you know what? 3 of these hypotheses were supported, and 1 were not. So we had, kind of mixed support for these hypotheses. And reshare with the reader. And in fact, when I read articles, sometimes I go right to that discussion chapter. Hey, they get to say, hypothesis 1, 2, and 3 is supported. We found differences in variables 1, 3, and 5 by gender, where, males had higher scores in those first 2 than females, and females had higher scores in that 3rd variable. And gosh, on these other 2 variables, there were no differences. That kind of summarizes things pretty quickly, and just in a few sentences out of the whole study. So tell the reader what's happened with respect to those hypotheses. Now, do these findings fit into the existing literature? Are you blowing them away with something brand new? Or is this kind of, hey, you know what, this is what they found in men, and this is consistent with what they found in women? Or this new sample that you're examining, okay? So, or replicating. So, tie it back together, right? Tie back. You've introduced the topic. Let's just go back to that first, hourglass. You've introduced the topic. You've developed the method. You've conducted the results. Now we're discussing, right? Discussing those findings and saying, do they fit back into literature? Wrapping up that whole research project. Okay. Also want to talk about the implications of these things, for theory and for practice, right? For theory, what does this mean for other basic scientists? Okay. What does this mean for practice? Should teachers be using this new intervention or this new reading strategy? Okay. And you get to speculate about these things. So you don't have to be right. I mean, in lots of ways, you do get to say, put your feet up on the desk and say, what does this all mean? What does this mean for the field that we've just been talking about and for the field that you're going into? So really, just speculate, all right? The discussion chapter is also a time to talk about limitations of the study. Spoke with a woman today. She did a study. She had 330 students, okay, who had not been retained after their freshman year. She gave them a survey to find out why that was. Well, it was from years ago. She only received 2 responses. Now, I'm happy that a professor is letting her go on with 2 responses, but this is certainly a limitation, right? Okay? So, so talk about the limitations. What went wrong, and what lessons did you learn from that? Okay? Critical. Everyone makes mistakes. What are the lessons learned from that? I just as a quick sidebar, I saw that Bill Gates and Melinda Gates on a TED Talk last night, and they were talking about the lessons learned when they spent $60 million on education in the U.S. And they said, we really thought that smaller classes would make an impact and things of this sort. And we found out, you know what, it really matters what kind of teachers sitting up front. And they kind of felt like it was a wasted thing. So there's limitations to every study, to every experiment. You know, so state it, call it out, move on, all right? Even if you're very smart, you make mistakes. It's okay. All right, recommendations for future research. What would you do if you had all the time, money, and energy in the world, all right? So tell the reader that, all right? That's a good place, by the way, if you're just starting this process. It's a great place to start to say, hey, this other peer review article said, God, if I had all time, money, and energy, I would randomly sample. I would look at that, look at that program for this different age, or for that gender, or single-sex education, or whatever. Look at that discussion chapter for ideas about what to do. Okay. And then conclusion, just kind of, summarize what's been, what you did here. All right? Okay. So, APA editing. I just have a few thoughts about this, and here they are. So, I mean, it seems like the stickiest parts for people are really the table of contents, and paginating that, tables, figures, and references. People get hung up with that, and somehow professors definitely pick up on that, and certainly the library pick up on that. So, get somebody who's really good at that. I'll just jump to the end. Get an editor. We do editing, but there's lots of editors out there, okay? So, I mean, you have to use us, but find a good editor that know what they're doing. It's good, they cost a little bit, but they're, in the long run, if it saves you a week of hassle, perfect. Plus, you have a different set of eyes on it. You've been looking at this thing for a while. It's difficult to see your own mistakes if you've constantly looked at it. So get an editor. Everything should be past tense. They're very finicky about those levels of heading. Okay. References need to be cross-checked that it's in the text and it's in the reference section. And if it's in the reference section, it needs to be in the text. And that takes a little bit of time to do. And frankly, it takes us about an hour to do 3 pages of references. So just to kind of give you a ballpark idea. Okay, the defense. Boy, are you going to be happy when you get at that defense, aren't you? Right? You'll be a little nervous, but you're going to be happy because this is the culmination of all of the years from beginning to apply to now we're at a defense state. And be grateful for that, and be happy that you have a committee that you can get together. When at my school, it was like, herding cats to get everyone together, okay? Everyone's too busy for, an hour, even though we've been at this thing for a while. So, be grateful. You can get everyone together. You're there. Here are the suggestions. You should be prepared. You better know what every single word in that document is. If you don't know what every single word in that document is, you better postpone that defense. Because what are they going to say? Well, what about that reference? And you don't recall that. You should really be on your game, okay? No wine the night before. Wait for the champagne for after. You have to be prepared and on your game. It's okay to be nervous, and you don't have to even be nervous, but know that you probably know more than they do, okay? And you've looked at it more times, and oftentimes they look at it, a day before. Having said that, try to ferret out all the committee's questions before you get to the meeting. Get all of their approvals along the way. Hey, are there any questions that you have at all, or something I can help explain that I should be extra prepared for? So let them know that, hey, I want to do really well here, and let me know how I can do really well. It's reasonable to ask your advisor, by the way, hey, what should I expect during this hour, okay? How do these things typically go, all right? So in my defense, for example, really, they were most of my committee was actually interested in the process, and it was the last time that they had their hands on me, so they wanted to know, hey, what did you think of the program? And they really, because as soon as they sign, now you're a colleague, okay? You've gone from student status to colleague status. There's an image in your brain, okay, when you're walking in there. The moving, transitioning from being a student, like, hey, is this good enough, to now I'm a colleague. True. So get their questions out if you can. Go through the PowerPoint, you know, be on the game. If you need a defense prep, call us. We'll figure out how to do a defense prep with you. If you're working with us personally, of course, that's all included. So, you know, you really want to walk through that and know your stuff, okay? And, you know, try to relax. I mean, what I'm going to say is, you know, everyone in the beginning of this talk 35 minutes ago, we talked about a happy environment, okay? Just move any anxiety or concern you have into that place where you're walking across that stage, or move that image into that beach, or with that person, or whatever. Neutralize the anxiety effect, potential anxious effects of it. Move it into that good place, and marry those two images together. You'll be better for it. Alrighty, now there's a question and answer period. So, and you don't have to have questions and answers, but I'll have answers. Okay, so in the discussion chapter, my chair keeps saying to deeply analyze and create ideas. Well, your chair probably doesn't analyze things deeply. They probably don't have any creative ideas for themselves, so they're really looking to you to do that, okay? It's okay. So just, you know, think outside. Well, can you give me, all right, so give me a, whoever this person is, okay, Gila, give me what the topic is, and I'll show you how we brainstorm around this, okay? And I'm going to take somebody else's question in the meantime. Can you talk a little bit about the instruments in a qualitative study? Oftentimes, the instrument is a semi-structured interview. So, what are we going to do with that semi-structured interview? Just like every other instrument, you need reliability and validity. Now, we've talked about the reliability piece. We're going to say we're going to conduct and examine CAPAs, right? The other piece that we're doing is the validity piece. Oftentimes with these semi-structured interviews, we give it to an expert, and they can say, ah, this has face validity. It seems like you're getting at that topic, all right? So a couple of experts. So in your methodology section, it would kind of go down like this. In the methodology section, in the instrument section, we would say, to assess the perceptions of this new training program, we'll go and inquire about with the leaders and the participants. And then we're going to have a semi-structured interview around leaders and participants' perceptions of the program. And then we're going to give it to people who know about the program. And then they'll look at your interview questions and say, those seem reasonable. And then in that instrument section, that's the validity part. Then also in that instrument section, we're going to talk about the CAPAs that we're going to assess reliability. And then we're going to get there. Okay. Okay. So Gila, I'm going to go back to her. So sensory problems and sleep. So what happened with sensory problems and sleep? Okay. Parents massaged their kids who had both problems of sensory problems and sleep problems, and the children improved in their sleep and their social scores. I know why most likely, but they want it integrated with the lit. Okay, so my question to you is this, we're going to go back. We're going to go back. Actually, it's here. Pardon me. I'm going through this quickly. So, well, is this a new phenomena, or is it found in the existing literature? That's the question, okay? So if it's new, say, hey, gosh, the literature hasn't really supported this kind of finding before, or it really has supported this finding. You know, what is the implication? What is the implication for parents who massage the kids with both problems. The children improved their sleep and then their social scores. Okay, so what are the implications for kids who are really, well, what are the implications for adults who can't sleep? And now they may have, so they have their partner massaging them. Does it help adults too, right? Think about different contexts. It improves their social scores. Were these with normal kids and just kids that couldn't sleep? How about for people that have social anxiety? So think about it in terms of different populations, right? Okay, you with me? So, okay, that's some of the way to start thinking about how to extrapolate some of these answers, okay, or some of these findings, rather. How long should you prepare for the defense? 1 hour to 3 hours? As long as it takes. You got to feel comfortable, okay? I mean, you got to feel comfortable. I mean, it was more, I mean, I had looked at it for a long time, and I was much more prepared than my committee. Not my main advisor, he knew what time it was, but everyone else really, you know, didn't really understand it. So, but I'm thinking longer than 3 hours, my friend. Okay. Okay, I've been struggling with APA reference formatting. Any recommended online resources? Yeah, Purdue had some great resources. Their writing center is excellent. So they have a good, and it's, so if you Google Purdue.owl, I don't know how they came up, I don't know if owl is their mascot or whatever, but they had some good resources there. After collecting the survey, any ideas on how long it takes someone to complete chapters 4 and 5? Well, Robert, it depends upon if you're doing quantitative or qualitative. Typically, quantitative, I mean, the truth is, you know, we knock it out in a week or 2 weeks. If you were doing nothing else but that, you could bang it out in a few days, let it cool down, the writing that is, and then take a peek at it again. If it's qualitative, it really depends upon how many transcripts you have. So, I mean, it's obviously it's different if you have 20 pages of transcript, or me who on Christmas Day, you know, 8 years ago was reading, you know, literally 400 pages of transcript. So it depends, obviously, on how much you have there, okay? Do you suggest doing a mixed method study for your dissertation? Thank you for that question. I absolutely suggest not doing a mixed method. Why? Because you have to talk about 2 different types of approaches. Why do this? Quantitative is often quick, dirty, we're done, okay? Qualitative, it's tougher. You have to do interviews. That's a process. You have to transcribe them. That's a process. You got to reread them. Or if other people reread them, that's a process. So you really have quite a few more steps there, okay? So having said that, there are some advisors that are like, you should really do a mixed method study and then triangulate the findings. Okay, you pick that person, not me. You have to live with that now. So if you have that, but try to, I mean, I know we don't feel like we have much power as a student, but to say, you know, can we just do a quantitative study and, you know, just ask a few open-ended questions at the end of it and keep it kind of quantitative. Or some people, or students and faculty, are more comfortable with the qualitative piece. Fine, but try to go down just one of the paths without both of them, you know? All righty. Where does the encouragement? Okay. Okay, so what is your advice in respect to transferring copyright to a journal for published work? Don't know offhand. When you submit your dissertation, that is copyrighted already. So all of that is going to go to, I presume, University of Michigan Library, and that's already going to be there. I think going and publishing parts of it in a book or journal articles, it's going to be a separate process. Does your service run the analyses in SPSS? Oftentimes we will use SPSS We use our own software. We use M+. So we use whatever Amos if we have to. So we'll use mostly SPSS. Certainly, if you need anything in SPSS, we can do that for you. I guess I should, make a plug that we do, obviously have consulting services, and I'll put that in there to you. Okay, so other questions. The recording will be out in a few days. Voice cut out. I presume it's working okay now. Okay. I'm glad you found it useful. Okay, so let me just get to. I just want to plug that. Yes, our company has. We've added to our services. We're helping with lit reviews. We're helping with drafting those or getting library searches. We assist with the methodology, quantitative or qualitative. We assist with the results chapter. We assist with editing. And we're taking reservations now, and they're running out, by the way. I mean, we're already pushed to the end of June for lit reviews, for example. So we're 6 weeks out for that. So we are taking reservations. You can call us, leave a message, or email us, info@statisticsolutions.com. The little calendar says July, but if you call soon, you can get it before July. Okay. So, and anyway, we'll get this recording. I want to thank you all for your participation over this last 4 sessions. It's really helped me organize my brain. I've loved your participation and feedback. It's it's rewarding for me to see that a vast majority of you that started this, hanging with me till the end of it. So it makes me feel like everyone is engaged, and I hope I get to know each of you by you calling us. Okay. Listen, if you think you're in the early stages or in different parts of it, call up Carmen. Okay. She's very friendly. She can very quickly answer your questions about, hey, am I at the right stage? Am I too early? Am I too late? Okay, call her, get in the queue. It's really helpful to get going, hitting the ground running. In fact, the people I'm talking with now are going to graduate this year. Imagine that, as opposed to, Nova going on and, kicking you up $2,600 every semester. I'm happy with Capella. They're doing methodologies first. That's great. Before their lit review. But let's get that lit review going. So there's a lot of good things going on. We can help. Send us an email. Let Carmen, work with you. If you're not ready, she won't get you on my schedule. But if you're even close to ready, we can. I'd be happy to speak with you. So finally, I want to just state the next webinar. It's the 7 secrets to completing your dissertation in a year. It's going to be May the 14th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, I want to thank you all so much. This has been fun. Go get support. Go graduate. Go move on to your best life. I love you all. All right. Good night now. Bye-bye.